Hello, hello, hello. We are working on our next quilt block. It has been so much fun working on different quilt blocks every night, and I could absolutely do a ton more. But of course, I have to move on to other projects, so we will be moving on to some other projects. So we have about seven more to go. Well, technically eight if we include today, but we have seven more to go. And then we will be finished the 20. I might do a couple extra just to give myself some wiggle room in thinking about what the layout is going to look like for these blocks or what I'm going to make out of them. Because the possibilities are endless for what we can do with these quilt blocks. So today's quilt block is called the card trick. And typically it is made a different way where there are a bunch of half square triangles and that it can be done. I'm not a friend of half square triangles, but there's a different way that ran across and I was like, I want to try it that way. So in order to get started, what we need are four colors. So traditionally in the card trick, we would either use one color. No, I'm sorry. Let me get it right. We'd use two colors that would be opposites of each other, or we could use up to four colors to give it some variety. So the measurements for this, and I will leave this in the description below. We have one block. Let me make sure I get it in the right order. Oops. We have one block that is 3.5 inches square, and that's this one. And this will be the center of our card trick. We have another block that's 3.5 by 6.5, again in each color, and these are going to go around the card trick. Then we will have two squares that are 5 1/8, and we have one that is 5.5. So these are both the background fabrics for the card trick. So to get started, there are a couple things that we need to do. I'm going to leave these intact right now, and I'm just going to start with my center. But in order to do that, I want to lay this out first. And I'm going to determine the order that I want these to go in before I get started. I kind of like this one. I like that the blues don't touch. So I think I'll leave it like this. And then what we're going to do is build out those 3.5 by 6.5 inch squares. So they should be touching the rectangles, excuse me. They should be touching the squares that they correspond with. Okay. And okay. So you can start to see the forming of the block. Let me just turn that just a little bit. And of course, we know we have some edges there, but you can see how it looks like squares that are kind of overlapping. And because it's not stitched together, we don't see the seam allowance, but you can see how this would be a square with this yellow hidden behind the blue. Here is another square with the dark blue hidden behind the green, like it's fanned out, the green with the green hidden behind this lighter blue, and then you have the square of the lighter blue that's hidden behind this yellow. Okay, so if we pull these back, we need to create the four patch first. We're going to slide our machine up, and we'll just slide these out the way. Our typical four patch, we just turn the two fabrics on top of each other. Can I get my foot is turned upside down, for my pedal is turned upside down. And let's stitch these together. Let's turn that iron on. And we're going to line this up. Anything that really showcases the colors of fabrics I love it. That's like one of my favorites, and I really think that this does a great job with this. The great thing is, if I were making this as a quilt, I would need all those. I would keep the backgrounds the same, and that's just the way I'm thinking now. And I would change out the color. So each block would have a different color. Okay. So we have everything stitched. We chain stitch these. And then we are going to cut them apart. One of the things I love about batiks is that, unlike cottons, batiks have a crispness to them. And I think it's because they dye the fabric, so there's much more dye being used than when you do a cotton print where the fabric is just colored on top, if you will. So I'm just finger pressing this open. And then I'm going to take the two pieces, find the seams, and I'm going to line those seams up. If you felt like you wanted to go to the dark side and press them in one direction, you could nest them. In this particular case, I opened those seams up, so I can't nest it, but I can line that up. And just really take my time to try to line those up and then clip everything in order. So hopefully, if I do everything right, it should line up. I'm not out of the woods yet. Everything that you do usually with your sewing machine for quilt blocks is at 1/4 of an inch. So since it's at 1/4 of an inch, you want to make sure that that's how wide your seams are. There are a few exceptions to the rule where they might tell you to make a scant 1/4 of an inch. But usually it's 1/4 of an inch. So a lot of times quilters don't talk about what the seam allowance is, because the assumption is, there we go, is that it's 1/4 of an inch. We're going to just take the time to finger press that open. We'll take it to the iron this time and give it a good press just to hold that in place. Okay. And we're just pressing with our iron. We are not ironing our fabric so that we can keep it whole and not start to wave it and get a little wonky. So we can take this and put this back. And because we press that and we use a 1/4 inch, you can see how these line up a little bit better. And now you can really, with a little less white area from my mat, you can see how they all fit together a lot better. Okay, So these are going to end up getting sewn to this. These will get sewn to this, and we're going to add some corners in here. Now we need to do these. Now ask me how I will mess this up. It is always possible. So what they tell us to do is to cut the 5/8 of an inch square in half and cut the 5.5 inch square in quarters. So the bigger square is going to get cut in quarters. This is going to get cut in half, and it's going to get cut in half on the diagonal. So using our straight edge, this is not the time to go rogue and decide that you are going to do this by eyeballing it because your hand-eye coordination is good. No. And I'm really trying to make sure that I line this up. Before I lay that down. Let's move this one out the way. That way I can just move straight up. Okay. And these pieces are going to go here and here. And then they are going to go here and here. Okay, so you can start to see this being built out. So it's just this little corner here, one, not even a corner, but the side that we need to do next. That's going to come from this part. This is going to get cut in two directions on the diagonal. And it's really hard when you're working with a white background or a light background and you're working with a white mat. So I'm just trying to make sure that everything is lined up. Let me just slide this. And we're just trying to keep this together. And we're going to go the other direction. And this is going to take a little bit of Jenga going on here to make this work, but I love the end result. The card trick for years has been one of my favorite blocks, and I don't use it often enough, but I love it. Okay, so here, these are now separated, and we can take those and they slide right in there. Move that water bottle out the way. And there we go. So you can see the entire block and the way that it needs to be arranged. We can pull out the units that need to be sewn together, and they will be like this, like that, and like this. So these two opposite sides are going to get these two pieces sewn together, and we'll add it to this. These two pieces sewn together, and we'll add it to this side. Then when these are all put together, we'll be able to create this unit and sew it on this side and this unit and sew it on that side. So that's the game plan. So we're going to start with these two, and we're going to slide these over just to move them out of the way. In order to work with this, these pieces, these triangles, are longer than the length of the block. So you'll see that there's some spillage over, and that'll happen on both sides. So what's going to happen is the easiest way to do this. Some people would want to do it like this, and then you're going to have this left over on this side. I don't want to do it that way. I want points on both sides evenly. So I'm going to use my clips, take the fabric, fold it in half, and pinch or finger press the corner, the center, and do the same thing for the triangle. You're using the longest side, in math terms, the hypotenuse. And be careful because this was cut in two different places on the bias, and it's the stretchiest part of the fabric. So you don't want to stretch these out of shape, and then it creates wonkiness. So let's do the same thing with this one. And we're just prepping it now. We're finger pressing that center. I like to call it a corner, and I have to catch myself. Line the 2 points up and finger press. And then I'm just using my clip to reinforce it. Okay, let's open this back up. I can see the crease for the blue. Let's make sure that we put the light fabric. You can see the finger crease there. And we're going to line those up. And clip. And there should be a little bit hanging over on each side. Oh, I was like, where does that go? We're going to do the same thing with the other blue. That center is right there. We're going to find the center of this, line them up. I should have some overhang on both sides, and clip. And that's going to be important with making sure that we have enough when we stitch everything together. We'll take it to the machine, and we're going to stitch, having that overhang there, a 1/4 inch. When you understand the construction of blocks and you understand the method to why they do things, it's just going to click from you from now on, and it'll become second nature for you to set your blocks up the way that they should go. So you won't question it, you won't think about it, you won't sit there and say, well, why? Oh, I was supposed to do it this way. Like, you'll automatically know, it'll just become second nature to you to do it that way because it'll make sense. Okay, snip all the excess. And then we'll open these up and we will press them. You'll make your decision as to how you want to press them. Press them open, press them to the dark side. You'll make that decision. And then we're going to add them to our 4-patch. Again, you are using the bias, so you really don't want to mush your fabric as you're pressing. And I mean by like moving the iron around a lot. Just get that seam open and don't move the iron all around the fabric. To iron it, you are just pressing. Everything should match up. So this is what this looks like. And then we're going to take the sides and stitch those together on both sides. And then we'll do the bigger units. Make sure that those seams underneath are laying nice and flat. It is not the end of the world if they don't, but it just makes your life a lot easier if they're not twisting when it comes to pressing it. Okay, so it'll look like this. And we'll do the other side. So these blocks do come together rather quickly. On last weekend, I made, I want to say 2 blocks on Saturday, and I may have made 2 on Sunday. I may do the same this week, or maybe working on another project. I haven't really decided, but I will at least bring 1 block a day. Okay, and so here's the unit. And we will slide these up. We'll press. And again, we are pressing, making that decision as to how we want to press. Do we want to press with our fabric going in a certain direction? Or do we want to press those seams open? That's up to you. Okay. Oops, didn't get a thread. Sometimes the threads hanging bothers me, sometimes they don't. So this is the end, this is the back side of this, and this is the front side. Okay, so we can set this one aside for right now, and we'll work on these units. There are 2 different pieces to the unit. So there's this, or 2 different sections. So it's this, and then it's this. So we're not going to line up in the center like we did before. This time we want to line up on one side and have the points on the other. So we're going to turn these and line up one of those edges with the corner and clip. Then do the same thing for the other side. And again, I'm not rushing, I could, but I'm not rushing because I really want to make sure that these are straight and they line up and clip. Do the same thing for this one. Just line that up. Right, those corners are together. And clip. And the other corner. And clip. And then I can do the chain piecing to get both sides done. So we have everything here. This corner is lined up, and you can see there, this is the spillage over here. So you want the triangle to be longer than that side of the colored piece because that's how everything is going to fit, overlap, and do what it's supposed to do. If they're the same size from end to end, you're not going to get everything to fit in nice and neatly. And it's also not going to give you your final 1/4 inch seam that you're going to need when you go to put everything together. Okay, that's one side. Making sure everything stays nice and lined up. Take your time. Do the other side. Now, when I do this side, it's going to want me to start at the point. You can flip it over and do it this way. I think it's easier to start at the corner. But if you're okay starting at the point, sometimes the needle chews the point up. And so I just prefer to start in the corner because I think I can get it to be a little bit cleaner that way. Okay, and then let's clip and do this side. Clip and clip. Okay, so the unit should look like this. And again, you can press towards your fabric. You can open it up. It's up to you. I'm pressing towards the green. But I will say, and I will always say, some people feel the need to open up their seams because they feel like, for whatever reason, that's better. Some people feel like pressing to one side is better. I'm not loyal to either way. Whichever way works, works. So I'm just taking the time right now to press those seams flat. And I'm just pressing. And so again, we are making the card trick block. It is one of my favorite blocks because I always just thought it was cool with the way that it looked. You'll see those wings up at the top. You can cut those off. Line everything up. And you can cut those off. You shouldn't be cutting anything else, just those two little triangles. And you'll see they're cut. There's a little bit, this is off a little bit. Sometimes I can see that fold. Okay, and then we're going to treat this the same way that we did the other ones. We're going to fold these in half, line up your seams, and pinch. And I'll just add a clip there. If you don't feel like using a ruler, then absolutely just use your rotary cutter and cut those little pieces off. These are the two seams that I'm lining up. I'm going to take those, line those seams up, finger press clip. Do the same thing to the triangles, the longest side. Really taking our time to line those up and clip. And the clip is just helping to reinforce that center press. And just hold it in place until I get there so that it doesn't, like it, the crease is going to be there, but it'll soften up over time. And I don't want it to soften up if I can help it. Okay, let's come back to the orange. So again, we found that midpoint. I'm going to take the midpoint of this triangle, line them up, and clip. And you can see like the spillage that's over just a little bit on each side. And again, that's what we want. A trick that I am doing, when I see the crease for this, I'm placing it right on my cutting mat, even though I can see it, just in case like I look away for a minute, I can still see that crease is there and it's lined up with this. So now when I take this one, I can take that crease and then just place it on top of the other one. I can see that. And now I can clip, and they should be even. And a keyword is should, because sometimes things could be a little off, especially depending on your seam allowance. So we're going to take these now back to our ironing board, to our sewing machine, and we're going to stitch. This time that point is going to be first. So just take your time, be careful, and make sure that you don't chew it up with the needle and the hole in the plate. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does, and it's just easier to pay attention to it than it is for it to be this is the one time that had to happen. And the reason why I don't want it to do that is because sometimes it will chew up your fabric right on that side, and even though it's not the end of the world, it makes it a little bit more difficult to go back each time, rip out that thread because it disturbs the side, and line everything up the way you need it to go. Okay, so clip these, take off that excess. And here we go. And you can see right in that corner, see how there's that overlap there? That's going to give us our 1/4 inch seam when we have to sew this block on to another block. So I'm going to open this up. I'm not going to trim the outside of this until I put everything together. That way, if I'm a little off, I won't be trimming down twice. So I could do this the first time and just trim this little side up. I'll show you what that looks like, even though I'm not going to do it, because I do want to consider the whole block. Okay. So these are the units for those corners. And again, you can see if it's not quite a 1/4 inch, you want something. because you can work with something. It's hard when you have nothing. And that's why you want those pieces that were hanging over. I could take my ruler or my square ruler, and I could take this, line this up using the corner, and I could cut off the excess that's hanging over for both sides. Make sure that I'm seeing my 1/4 inches where I need to see them, and then trim it. I choose to wait because I want to see it all at the end. And then that way I can just trim it all up at one time. We can cut these little triangles off this side and cut that little triangle off there. Because it's not going to do anything. We're going to the seam and create some bulk that I don't need to create. Okay. You can see how that's going to come together and form the block. I do want the center of this, so I'm going to use the seams and line those up. Finger press. And do the same thing here. Finger press. And we're just clipping it to hold on to it. I want to line it up with this seam. So I'm going to take the center of this and line it up and clip. I'm going to take this seam here and line it up with this seam and clip. Do the same thing on the other side of this one. And they should, and again the key word is should, if your hand was steady, it should all line up, and you'll see that you will have some spillage on that side. Move this out the way. We'll do the same thing on the other side. We're taking our time, and hopefully taking our time will pay off. Like I said, sometimes it doesn't work. It'll still be a little off, but it won't be a lot off. And I'd rather a little off than a lot. So these are lined up. They're clipped and ready to go. And let's stitch on both sides to finish up this block. Okay. So that's one side. And we lined up those seams. The center does what the center's supposed to do. And the seams are lined up on that side. We'll flip it and do the same thing on the other side. And once we sew on this final side, or corner, whatever you want to call it, the block is done. And we just need to take it to the iron and give it a good press. Okay. So everything is put together. We're going to press this so that we can admire the final block. And again, you're making your choices as to whether you want to press those seams open or if you want to press them to one side. I'm opting to press them to one side, but that's not the requirement. It is up to you. So I'm pushing them to the side. I do turn the block over and press on the pretty side, if you will, just because that gives it that last flat look. Let's flip this over. So what happens is, and you can see it kind of here, sometimes when you're doing that press, your seams will want to fold over, and you do want that to be flat. So that's why we flip them over. That way we can use our iron to really get those seams flat. And if they don't want to go flat on us, we're pulling out the spray starch. So I just use a little bit. They say a dab will do. You don't have to go a long way. And I'll wait like when I have the whole thing together, and then I'll really, really, really like press those seams. So if they don't bounce and behave the way that I need them to right now, I will bounce and behave them later. Again, I can use a little bit. That was a little more than I wanted to use, but that's fine. And it's just helping me to push that seam flat. And again, I don't want to do a whole lot of ironing. I'm just trying to press that seam from being a little folded to laying flat. And this little bounce, this little side right here is going to be the bane of my existence. Okay. Slide that out the way. And here we go. We have the card trick. So this was a much different method than the one that traditionally we use. It required us to make diagonal out here rather than making them in here. So traditionally, to put the blocks together, there would be a lot of half square triangles and other things like that. But this way, it avoids that. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, I absolutely have to try it this way. And so I did find that this was a little bit easier. Now, I didn't try it the other way, but in my mind, when I was looking at all those half square triangles, I was like, I like this. So, and there were a couple hourglass blocks and some other things, and I was like, yeah, I won't do that. So I did think that this was easier. Like I said, I will provide a link for the instructions. I didn't see like a web page for this. They just had the instructions for them, and then because I know how things go together, I was able to figure it out. So if you're not used to using it, absolutely use the video and it will help you to put this together. But again, we have finished the card trick. This is block number 13, lucky number 13 in our series of 20 blocks in May. Again, we may do a couple extra Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing and commenting. Stay tuned because sometime tomorrow, it might not be this late, because I need to go for a hair appointment. So I may do it a little bit earlier. I already have everything cut out and ready to go for Friday. But we'll be working on block number 14. So stay tuned. But again, thank you everyone for joining us today as we made the card trick block.